to Yom Kippur to Sukkot. Each of these holidays celebrates and commemorates another great event through our history, the Exodus from Egypt, God's giving us the Torah at Mount Sinai, the creation of the universe, and particularly the day in which God created man, the Day of Atonement, then Sukkot, and then the last holiday the Torah mentions is Shmini Atzeres. And what comes next? A completely new subject, a new topic. What's the next topic? It jumps into Hanukkah is not a biblical holiday, but you're not wrong. I'll tell you why. Open a Chumash and you will see that the very next chapter, the very next discussion is bringing the oil that is crushed for lighting to the Kohen. It's like the Torah is intimating to us, saying that what comes next after Shmini Atzeret is Hanukkah. Even though Hanukkah is a post-biblical holiday, Hashem is already telling us about it. But there's one more lesson before I take your insights that I want to share with you. What's the common denominator with all of the holidays, starting with Shabbos, going through all the rest of them? Pesach, Shavuos, Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, Sukkot, Shmini Atzeres, and Hanukkah. What's the common denominator with all these holidays? Pardon? Agriculture? Not Hanukkah. Come on. Light. Very good. Light. On all of these holidays, we kindle lights. And maybe this is what the Torah is telling us. What is a Yom Tov? What is a good day? What is a holiday? What makes it special is that there's light. We start off with light. So while here, for those of you watching and aren't in South Africa, there's a phenomenon called load shedding. Okay, you must have picked up now what it is. We have no electricity. Thank God we have wonderful people here, right? Such as Miriam, who gave us her mini generator, her little inverter, and Rennie, who's giving us internet. I think the internet may be working with upstairs inverter. Either way, I haven't checked. I can't with a cracked screen. I don't want to mess around, but it's working because I see our YouTubers are with us. But the point is, what's the difference between light and no light? What's the difference? If you look around this room, the same wonderful people are here even with the lights off. The art, when I look at my house and my shul, there's beautiful art. If you look at the details, look here at a beautiful ark, the Aron HaKodesh, it has fine detail to it. It's still there even if the light's off, even if there's no electricity, even if it's load shedding. But what's the answer? What's the difference if the light's there or not? When the light is present, you acknowledge, you recognize, you see, you experience it, right? And that's maybe the message about a Yom Tov and Shabbos too, is that it's an opportunity once a week for us to take a break, to pause from all the mishigas, from all the distractions and problems and everything else, and focus, acknowledge, appreciate, and cherish our blessings. Yeah.
First comment.
Yeah.
If blood shedding was concept,
Exactly the point. You need the light.
the light that Hashem created by the sun.
Also true. Well,
Second point,
yeah,
somewhere in your sequence,
yeah.
you left out the first.
Rosh Chodesh is, I don't know, it wasn't included in the parsha last week.
As far as I know,
Yeah, it certainly was, but it wasn't, I was just enumerating what it says. But if you want to start going through all of the holidays, there's probably about 65 or maybe even more holidays in the year if you go in Hasidic. Because now that you mentioned Rosh Chodesh, there's probably 18 Rosh Chodeshes a year, right? Because some months have 1 day Rosh Chodesh, some months have 2, depending if it's a 29 or 30 day lunar. I'm not sure exactly how it's determined. Yeah, but I'm telling you, Rosh Chodesh, as we know, is a biblical holiday or a day of note, a day of significance. What about Tu B'Shvat? What about Purim? What about the 6 fast days, which the Torah, which eventually will become holidays too? So now you start enumerating all of these, you're in for a lot of Jewish holidays. It looks like we're not sharing our screen. I need to go back. The 3 weeks, they're a time of mourning. They're not a holiday per se. Let's just get let me pull this out, I'm sorry, because it looks like that the people can't see our screen. And luckily somebody just messaged that to me. Otherwise, I would not have known that you can't see the screen. Yeah. Rosh Chodesh does, yeah, it does come from the Torah. But what I'm saying, I was mentioning specifically what the parsha of the week is. Parshat Emor last week. Now we're in Bahar and Kosai, which comes with its own blessings. Look what I did. Now I messed the charging. Now it's not charging anymore. The frustrations. Yeah, but it's not charging on the computer stuff charging, but I'm not gonna mess with it. Let it go till it dies, and then we'll mess with it. Otherwise, I learned how many times have I kept you waiting? Wait, the computer, leave it. So I think it's an important message and lesson about the light because we can recognize and appreciate and cherish the blessings we have, which, as I've said to you before, the word asher, which is the Hebrew word for rich, it's spelled with 4 letters. Ayin, what's ayin? Shin, shinayim, teeth. Yud, yadayim, your hands, your action, your ability to do exactly. And reish, which is either rosh, your head, or raglayim, your feet. There you go. And we're all, if we just count our blessings, how much would a person be willing to pay for any of those if they didn't have it? Right? Can't just flick a switch and get your eyesight back. I want to tell you something that just happened. I think it was on Sunday. 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks, it's a month ago, it was on Chalamayit Pesach, just about a month ago, there was a terrorist attack in Israel where 2 girls and their mother were shot in cold blood. The difference was that the 2 girls were pronounced dead immediately and there was nothing that could be done. But the mother, she was on life support for a couple of days until they had to call it. And because there was still some functionality, the doctors asked the family, the surviving family, there were a family of 7 reduced to 4, if they would allow their mother's organs to be donated and to save other lives. And they allowed for their mother's organs to be transplanted. Last week, my mother-in-law spoke about it here and the halachic ramifications about it. And she told you very clearly how she has signed an organ donation form where she is encouraging and endorsing and promoting that people should do the same. Well, Rebbitzin D, what was her first name? Lori D. She donated her organs. And you're talking about both of her kidneys, her heart, her spleen maybe, and her cornea. She saved so many people's lives that somebody now has vision thanks to her. Somebody has a beating heart. Pardon? Well, that's what the other share was. I think, we didn't record it because my mother-in-law did not want it to be recorded. So it's not available on Zoom. But as she mentioned then, it is a matter of discussion in Jewish law. There are different takes and perspectives about it. So maybe one day I could give you a more comprehensive shiur. The short of it is that it's a matter, it's not clear cut. It's not black and white. The black and white is that you can't risk one life to save another. That's really where the controversy and debate is. But the easy ones like blood and platelets and bone marrow, kidney, and lobe of liver and others, I went in the sequence of what's easier to harder, because kidney and lobe of liver are a lot more invasive, even bone marrow. But when it comes to platelets and blood and other easy ones that regenerate, by all means, you have a mitzvah too, and it's self-beneficial as well. So just to get back to the story I was telling you, it happened this week, Sunday, fresh story. It's not one I told you before. Lori D's husband, son and daughter, survivors, were in a hospital this week, meeting with one of the recipients of their mother's organs, with the heart recipient. And they met with the recipient. And it was just incredible. And the daughter turned to the doctor then, or to the recipient, and asked, would you mind if I take a listen to my mother's heartbeat? Teenage 16-year-old daughter of Lori D. And the doctor said, sure. He took out a stethoscope, put it on her ears, and placed it on the woman's heart, which was originally Lori's. And there was the daughter crying listening to her mother's heartbeat. You think about how one can perpetuate their life after they're gone. In truth, we're all one. We all care for each other's life. And that's really the theme of what I want to talk about today. So what I'm going to do right now is minimize this screen. I'm going to fast forward here. I'm not going to talk about everything that I prepared because as we could see every day, there's not enough time every day. So these are all different things I was going to talk about. I could touch on them very briefly. Let's start here. We're talking that we're currently in the period of the Sphira. In fact, that's also in last week. The Torah says, "U'sefartem lachem." You should count for yourselves. And very interestingly, I mentioned this yesterday, that it tells us, the mitzvah to count for yourself. You have to count each day. I'm going to get to why we count the days and not just the weeks, or the weeks and the days. Why both? We'll get to that in a moment. So I'm going to fast forward. We talked about working on self-refinement. We'll get back to these ideas, but I want to start from another slide. So let's start here, okay? The truth is, we did this one yesterday, but I'm going to just repeat it again here today. This is why we have the semi-morning period in the Omer, and it talks about the death of the students of Rabbi Akiva, who passed away during this period. As you can see, I highlighted, besides for the pathophysiological reason, that there was a spiritual reason. What was the spiritual reason? Because they did not treat each other with respect. Says the Gemara, and here you have it in the Shulchan Aruch. We're going a little bit more text-based today. It is customary that during this period, we don't do weddings, we don't have haircuts, and a whole lot of other things that we don't do. We don't listen to music, right? Now, it's one of the most, comes along Yom Kippur, Lag BaOmer, which was yesterday. We say, here is a joyous day. This is a day that we celebrated with bonfires and with dancing and singing and feasting and parading and rejoicing and everything that we do on Lag BaOmer. It is a great day to celebrate and wonderful. Now, the question is, are we only celebrating the fact that the plague targeting a particular group of Jews stopped then? Okay, we know that there was this plague. There obviously has to be more to it. What's relevant to us if it's a story that happened so long ago? And that's what I said we'll focus on today, is that story about the students of Rabbi Akiva, I think is a pertinent and relevant lesson, and it captures a timeless challenge to our people, in a sense, to all people, because I think all people struggle with this idea. And that's why I was asked if I'll talk about this respect versus love, and that's why I'm going to talk about that here. And we started touching yesterday on the students of Rabbi Akiva. How is it that if their teacher cherished this particular verse of the Torah, what does this verse say? To love your fellow as yourself. And there was a discussion amongst various sages in the times of the Talmud, and each one chose a different verse. One sage says, Bereshit bara Elokim, in the beginning God created heaven and earth. That has to be the most important fundamental verse. It sets forth that God created the world, monotheism. And another sage said, no, to me, it's a different verse that's most important. And he chose the verse about the creation of man, because man is the most important. And another sage, he chose the verse about that you should offer the sacrifice in the morning and the other one in the afternoon. It's about consistency, about commitment. That was his verse. Rabbi Akiva, what verse did he choose? Well, we all know. So I posed this question to you yesterday. And the question was, if this is indeed the verse that Rabbi Akiva chose, and if these 24,000 distinguished disciples were his students, should they not be the foremost exemplars of living up to this principle that he said is the most fundamental of the entire Torah? The fact that we identify them as his students, the students of Rabbi Akiva, we say, doesn't that demonstrate that they were truly his disciples in the fullest sense? Right? Maybe he didn't discipline them enough in this. So were they truly his disciples? In fact, the word discipline sometimes is a misnomer. I think it's relevant to our discussion here about what discipline means. As a parent, I sometimes have to discipline my kids, but I have to realize, I heard this from a professor, a Jewish professor, I'm forgetting his name, a Holocaust survivor. who still goes around and talks about his expertise is the field of education, of teaching about raising children. And he discusses this specifically. He says, what is discipline? Discipline is related to the word etymologically to disciple, to a student. Will your students truly cherish you if all you do is what we traditionally call discipline? Therefore, he says, discipline has to be out of love, which is what Rabbi Akiva taught, that love is the most important thing. So if these were his disciples, should they not have internalized his teaching? Should they not have been molded by his influence? So how is it that they, of all people, were so profoundly deficient in this area that they didn't get along with each other? That, as we said, as the Talmud said, as I put it on the screen just before, they didn't treat each other with respect. What is going on here? So let's try to understand this. And to really get to the depth of their mistake, well, let's first explore the difference between love and respect, which we touched on yesterday. There's loving and there's respecting, okay? And in Hebrew, there are different terminologies. The word here in Hebrew is mipnei shelanahagu kavod zeh lezeh, because they didn't treat each other with respect. What's Rabbi Akiva's verse? Ve'ahavta l'reacha kamocha. Ahava. Ahava is love. Kavod is respect. There's a difference between them, right? Now, interestingly, kavod is related to the word kaved, which means a heart. Not a heart, liver. We'll have to analyze that in a moment. But let's just first think about this for a moment, the difference between love and respect, because there are people in life who you like and respect, and that's wonderful. Hopefully, our spouses, we like them, we respect them, we love them, we feel for them, we care for them. But then there are people who maybe you like and respect, but you don't love them. Yes? Could you think of such people? Of course, there are people who you may not like, may not respect. And then there are people who, whatever combination of this you like. But the point is, you love your family, right? Why do you love your family? We love our parents, starting chronologically. We love our siblings. We love our spouse. We love our children. But you don't necessarily always respect them. You'll get the gist of what I'm saying? Sometimes even your spouse who you love, but maybe you have a hard time liking them. You know what I'm saying? Now, conversely, you might have a politician or a TV personality, an actor, a professor, a teacher, I don't know. You use the examples. You respect them immensely, but do you love them? Maybe. You might like your next door neighbor. You might enjoy the presence, the company of an acquaintance, a friend, a classmate, a coworker, even the cashier at the hypermarket. Think of who else? The petrol attendant. You like them, but do you love them? You get the gist what I'm saying? What exactly is the difference between liking and loving, or loving and respecting? Considering that there's all these different types of people who you love and respect, etc., right? So let's analyze this for a moment. Love comes from what we have in common, our sameness. Respect comes from our differences. Got it? We love people. We have something in common with them. There's something that's the same about us. But liking, respecting is based on differences. Loving someone underscores that shared identity we have. We come from same source, same mishpacha. Liking somebody, oftentimes, the respect that we have for another person is that distinctive difference that there is. Why do we respect certain people? Maybe there's something we aspire towards in them that we want to emulate, that we're enamored with. Make sense? The reason I love my loved ones is because in a very, very deep place, we're one. We have something deep inside of us. Sometimes it's not recognizable. There's a great story that's always told on Lag BaOmer. I haven't told it to you yet this year, so I'll tell it to you now. There was a couple who were married for 10 years, and they haven't yet had children. They were very, very distraught. They liked each other. Maybe they even loved each other. Hopefully, it sounds like they did. But they had a problem. They wanted to have children. Now, this story happened 1900 years ago when there was no genetic testing to determine who was infertile. And Jewish law permits divorce under this premise. So they came to their rabbi. His name was Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. His yortzeit, Hilula, is on Lag BaOmer. And this is one of the stories that's always told on Lag BaOmer. They said, Rabbi, what do we do? Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai said, listen, you have this allowance to get divorced, but I want you to do one thing before you get divorced. It seems like it's not just an ancient thing that Rabbi Shimon suggested, because I have a congregant who told me that when he got divorced, he went for a similar kind of experience where they went for a divorce party. You ever heard of a divorce party? They went for a divorce party. This guy tells me that when he and his wife got divorced, they had a party to celebrate the parting ways. But it was a little bit different. In his case, he told me, Brian, there's a share here, please, thank you. In his case, he told me it was like to Stechem. His wife, they had a big party with all her friends, and he was the laughing stock. In this case, Rabbi Shimon suggested they have a party to celebrate their parting of ways because they weren't getting divorced because they hated each other, because they were in a toxic relationship and couldn't get along. They were getting divorced simply and purely because they couldn't have children. So they have this big party. And the man at the party says, Brian, maybe put it onto vibrate, onto silent, be less disruptive, thanks. The man says to his wife at the party, we're celebrating because we really like each other so much. And it's so sad that we have to part ways and you're moving tonight back to your parents' house. I want you to take anything in this house that you like. Anything that you cherish, take it home with you. You move to your parents' house, your favorite silverware. If there's jewelry, if there's whatever it might be, crystals, whatever you like, china, take it with you. Furniture. Well, this woman started toasting l'chaim with her husband, one after another. The pain of separating. The only pain that she gave him that night was champagne. Because after all, after the engagement ring and the wedding ring, now all the suffering, shame. Sorry, it's terrible. She got him good drunk. And now that he was intoxicated, she told the servants to take his bed and carry it to her parents' house where she was moving to after this party. In the morning, of course, the man wakes up and doesn't recognize his environment. What? I'm in my in-laws' house. What's going on here? He turns to his wife. I thought we got divorced yesterday, he says to her. She says, yes, but remember what you told me yesterday? Anything I want, that I cherish, that I really like from this house, I could take. There's nothing I took but you, because I really, truly cherish and love you. Now they really had a dilemma. What do? They just got divorced. So they went back to Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. They came back to the great sage and they asked him, what do we do? Rabbi Shimon blessed them that they should bear children. And they did. And of course, one wonders, why couldn't he bless them the day before when he told them to get divorced and have a divorce party? I'm sure there's many answers to this, but one beautiful answer that I read in one of the Rebbe's teachings was that Rabbi Shimon really wanted them to feel that love and to really bring that their love should become so manifest that should be brought to the fore, that they really truly love each other. And this party of parting ways, and that she would take him back home, would really express that love that they really had for each other, that maybe they weren't expressing before. And only thereby were they really able to bear children. And I think in that sense, that story articulates to us what that concept of love is, because there's something deeply connected between them. And now, of course, when it comes to spouses, it's much harder because it's two different people. Men are from Mars and women are from Venus. But when it comes to family, all the more so. You and your parents, where you come from, you and your siblings, you're connected in this very real way. There's love there, even if it's repressed and complicated sometimes. Even the hate, when it exists, is usually a result of the profundity of that love. So the depth of the hate is always commensurate, actually, with the depth of the love. And when you see a couple who yesterday were Romeo and Juliet, don't be that surprised when the next day they're Hitler and Stalin, because they loved each other so much. When that love is broken, you can understand why and how it manifests in that way. So obviously, that's the love. But on the other hand, when I like you, when I respect you, it means that I appreciate your unique personality, your character traits, which make you unique, which make you different, distinct, apart from me. That's what I'm respecting. I like you not because we're one. One is our family. There's a difference. That individuality that enriches and enhances the respect, the appreciation for each other. That's usually where respect comes from. Love overlooks differences. That's why they say love is blinding, right? It turns a blind eye to distinctions. It ignores those elements in which we are dissimilar, maybe even opposite of each other. When people fall in love, they often ignore all the differences. They don't notice they're in, what do they call that mode, all that chemistry that's going on, that they don't notice the flaws. That's why people need to be grounded. That's what I love about the Hasidic dating system, maybe we could talk about. But when people are flying high from that feeling that there's this, the fireworks, whatever you want to call that, they get drunk in love. Because in love, we often forget, we deny, we repress the distinctions that exist. That's good. There's a benefit to that. But I don't know if that's healthy when you're choosing a life partner. Anyways, but I don't know if anyone here is in that category these days, right? Maybe you are. Shouldn't negate this. Like the respect that you have for another person is a lot more of a calculated, no? More sober. That those differences it's something. You're not going to respect somebody who you don't appreciate, right? Our family's one with us on some level. We have no choice about that. You could pick your friends, you can't pick your relatives. We come from the same womb. We share the same genes, the same dispositions, characteristics. Sometimes we even look alike, right? We saw each other running around our home in our birthday suits or whatever, and our nappies. So when you love your siblings, doesn't mean that you like your sibling. Doesn't mean you respect them. You might feel, rightly or wrongly, that their personality needs refinement. That they are, argumentative and pugnacious and contentious and difficult and obnoxious and selfish and egocentric and narcissistic. Anything else you feel about your siblings you want to tell us? I don't feel that way about my siblings, by the way. God did us a favor and spread us all over the world, so we get along with each other very nicely. It might be hard to appreciate to respect someone who you love so much because you expect better from them, right? But you still love them. They are your family. They're your brother, your sister, right? Even if that love is sometimes translated or expressed in hate, there's a love. The love we take for granted, that's the thing. It comes with the territory. Just as we take ourselves for granted, oftentimes we take others for granted. And that's something I want to say is that we have to know, and that's where boundaries comes in, is not to take others for granted, not even to take ourselves for granted. Because when the Torah says, love your fellow as yourself, if you could truly appreciate yourself, then you can appreciate another. It's very easy to get irritated with others if we don't love ourselves. We don't appreciate ourselves. We mustn't knock ourselves down. Don't take yourself for granted. Recognize and appreciate. Here's something I like to say when people keep knocking themselves down. I'm so bad at that. I'm terrible. I'm not good. You know what you could say? I'm not good at that. I'm good at other things. Or maybe I'm not good at that yet. Change it. You be more positive on yourself. Don't be so harsh and hard and difficult on yourself. Liking, when we come to respecting others, it represents the fact that we don't take them for granted. And that's why love is not enough in a relationship. We appreciate the contribution, the difference that they make in our life. That's what it's about. So love, which I don't think love has to be earned. It's family, it's inherent, it's genetic, right? You want me to like you. That's a different story. Respect is something that's earned. So liking somebody is because there's something that complements my own existence in a sense, right? There's something that you have that I don't. If you didn't have that quality, you would be like all the billions of other people. There's 8 billion other people who I don't necessarily hate, but I don't necessarily respect or like them either because there's nothing about them that I appreciate. The people who I appreciate in my life are those who make a difference to me. And I think there's a great value to each emotion. Love allows us to fly very high, to transcend the ordinary calculations, and that's important. But love also has a drawback, call it. And that is sometimes you see a couple married and they're absolutely in love with each other. They're flying high in that romance and affection. There's Romeo, Juliet. But what happens when the sparks are no longer there? Maybe they loved each other, but they didn't like each other. You know what I'm saying? They fell in love, but they didn't grow in love. They didn't climb in love. That's a problem. Their attraction to each other swept them both off their feet and lifted them from earth to heaven. Wonderful. They never found a genuine respect for each other, and that's the problem because they were so intoxicated in the love for each other. And so I think it's important that they don't just, people have to, land, sober up, understand, and that's where I talk about the shidduch system, where although it's very different than what most of the world, the way people fall in love, the shidduch system is designed very, very differently. Why people misunderstand that Jewish law mandates complete physical distance between man and woman before their marriage. You know that. Some people think it's repressive, it's illogical. You need to have a test drive before you could go into a car, But the truth is, those test drives can complicate things. When a man and woman become physical, that intense experience camouflages their objective, sober perspective. That's the problem. And in that tremendous delight and excitement and pleasure of the physical touch that we all know, people become blinded to the deep rooted differences between them. Now, if life is all about just pleasure, okay, just a pleasure, come and go. There was a rabbi in my neighborhood. In fact, my sister married his nephew. The rabbi related a story. He's passed on already 20-something years ago. He's a very old man. During, I think it was the Second World War, he got engaged to a girl for marriage purposes. Why? Because she was American and he was Polish, European. And we know during the war, people wanted to do anything they could to save themselves, to get out. So what did this man do? He figured, got a green card, you know? And he came to his Rebbe, previous Lubavitcher Rebbe. The Rebbe said to him, don't do that. A girl, a woman, a human being is not a disposable tissue. You blow your nose and use and abuse and go. God forbid. You're not marrying this woman just to get your visa to America. So either you determine if you really love her and you're marrying her because you want to build a family together and all of the other aspects of loving relationship, but you ain't marrying her for a green card. They got married, had many children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren. But the previous Rebbe said, you better make sure that it's not a love for what can I get out of this relationship. That's not the way it works. And that's the beauty about Judaism, that it cautions us to make sure that we don't only love our spouse or our children, but that we also like them and respect them. And by keeping that physical distance, particularly we're talking now about marital relations, is that we have that mental and emotional space to determine if it's right in a mature and a calculated and a sober and a senseful, proper, serene way, which I think is oftentimes missing in secular society. We don't let the fictional romance of novels and movies, the delusional dreams of grandeur, to distort our reality, to make us believe that we'll be forever on honeymoon, which is, by the way, why I always wish a young couple, may you have an eternal honeymoon, because oftentimes I find that after the honeymoon, it's over. They go, what happened? The Kutzker Rebbe, Rabbi Menachem Mendel Morgenstern, he once quipped as follows, and his grandson, his great-grandson, oftentimes comes from Israel to visit our community. It's oftentimes during the weeks. I don't necessarily have him on Shabbos, but he comes around business. And we always joke about this line that his great-grandfather taught. He said, if I am I because you are you, and you are you because I am I, then I am not I, and you are not you. But if I am I because I am I, and you are you because you are you, then I am I, and you are you, and now we could talk. What on earth did he say? Is that just a bunch of words? What was he saying? Did you get it? Did you chop it? Love is based on the idea that you and I are one. Respect is based on the notion that I am I, but you are you. That's the thing. I always like to say, when a man is opening the door to the car for a woman, either the woman's new or the car is new. Okay? The thing is, you have to realize that we don't just do things to impress others, dress to impress. Right? I have the right to be me, and you have the right to be you. And nobody should ever feel in any relationship that their autonomous identity has been compromised, has been risked. That's not what people get married for, right? There are boundaries between us that need to be preserved. And yes, love is necessary. And if a relationship is only filled with boundaries, it's not a good relationship. There has to be the balance, right? It's not enough to have love. You have to have that respect. Remember, this is not only about marriages. This is about any relationship. Love undermines the boundaries between a couple And so that is wonderful because, you know, there has to be, the couple have to be united. But if there's no boundaries in the relationship, what happens? When the boundaries and differences begin to emerge, the love could receive a fatal blow. That's not what you want. So you need to have that sense that you don't lose your own identity in any relationship, regardless of age and stage, okay? We have to appreciate and honor the you of you, even though you and I are us, but there's still a you and I. I have to appreciate you, you have to appreciate me. That's the thing that people don't realize. Sometimes you see a couple who, who married and they're absolutely in love with each other. They have the same thing, the sparks, but Romeo and Juliet could also fall out of love. They don't have that respect for one another. They loved each other, but maybe they didn't like each other. They fell in love, but they didn't grow in love. I know I'm repeating myself, but that's the Chinese proverb. First you tell them what you're going to say, then you tell it to them, and then you tell them what you said. So the point is, it's not just about attraction that blows people off their feet. It's not just about blind love. It is so important that people have that respect and appreciation for each other. And like I said, this isn't just about romance with our children too. All parents love their children, but do we all respect our children? Again, let it not be a smothering love where we smother them and restrict them. You need the balance. Yeah. Exactly. And my father, the old European way, would put his, and I knew if he did this, and he would go, es passt nicht. What does es passt nicht mean? Unbecoming of you. I expect better from you. Listen, one could say he expects better. Thank God, I feel like for the most part, my siblings and I came out all right. My parents, I think they did something good, and I have to try to do that with my kids and also respect them. And there has to be that balance because, like we said, discipline is you want them to be your disciple. And disciple is one who appreciates and cherishes the love and knows that they're respected. So they have the right to be themselves. And you as a parent have the right to tell them what you expect of them. I have the right, I have to respect their choice, but I have the obligation and responsibility to nurture my children, to show them, to guide them, to teach them, and to help them get through the challenges, the obstacles, and the difficulties of life, and to give them the resources that they need to overcome them. So, of course, this is something that every person needs to ask themselves, do I do the right job in that, right? In Hayom Yom, in Hayom Yom, the Rebbe mentions that just as wearing tefillin every day is a mitzvah that every man is commanded by the Torah, regardless of their level of observance. Every Jewish man has to wear tefillin. So the Rebbe would say, every parent has the obligation and responsibility to spend time every single day to say, what do I do for my children today? Regardless what age and stage. Right? We could be 120 to be there to think, what are we doing? How are we caring for our children? They grow, they change, they fluctuate. You think about the differences of how we raise our kids, maybe different stages in our life, whether it's emotional, psychological, financial, right? Economics plays a difference. But the point is how we think about them and what we do for them. Anyways, if the hat fits, you wear it. And this is the concept of love versus respect. That the love comes from where we're all one, right? The distinction between loving and liking or loving and respecting is that there's a difference. And we say that love is not enough. We have to have those boundaries. But that this isn't only about spouses and children or siblings. We as a Jewish people are also a family. And we have to recognize that as a family, the same struggles and challenges that you can have in an individual microcosmic family, in the macrocosm of the Jewish nation, we have similar challenges. Think about, I'm sure I've previously told you, you heard this from Rabbi Jacobson. He jokes, what's the difference between the anti-Semite and the Jew? After all, they both don't like Jews. So then he tells a story. He goes, you ask any civil anti-Semite his opinion about the Jewish people, and they'll tell you, but we're horrible people, right? The venom of the earth, aggressive occupiers, and hear all the garbage they'll say. Or they'll tell you how we're all stingy billionaires. What else the anti-Semites like to call us? Parasites. Run the country. Guilty of global warming. And any other accusations you heard about us lately? Kill Jesus. Crucifiers. We're responsible for what's going on now in Sudan and Afghanistan and the Congo and Yemen and Syria and load shedding. What else are we to blame for? Winston Churchill once said, and I would say Winston Churchill did not come across as an anti-Semite, but he said once that an anti-Semite is somebody who hates Jews more than necessary. So let's talk about the guy who hates Jews as much as necessary, And you ask him, you hate Jews, so why do you go to Dr. Levy or Dr. Goldberg? What's his name? The cardiologist. Come on. Who? Jewish? But who's the other cardiologist? You're skipping my head. Huh? Salatin. Now you start listing all the Jewish cardiologists we know. All right. Why does he go to him? And why is his lawyer Mr. Levitt? And why is his advocate, his attorney, someone else, Mr. Klein, Mr. Cohen? And why is his architect, Mr. Berkowitz or Mr. Pakroy? Right? And who does he like to play golf with? Right? So I'll tell you now that they're different. They're the exception. They're honest. They're good people. Right? I don't like Jews. But those guys are not like the rest of them. Some of my best friends are Jewish. Ask them about the Jewish people. Boy, will it tell you. Forget about it. Now, turn to your fellow Jew. Ask him about the Jewish people. He'll tell you, Mi ka'amcha Yisrael. I love the Jewish people. My people. I'm the best of the best, right? There's nobody like my people. The best, the holiest, the sweetest, the most amazing. So tell me about the guy who you stopped going to shul, the one who used to sit next to you, right? A ganev, a thief, a gazlan. And how about the guy who's your neighbor, huh? What about him? A shmendrik, a liar. I'll tell you, you want to know about him? No, it's lashon hara. And what about your brother-in-law, huh? A crook, wouldn't trust him with a single rand. Keep going on about the people who he hates. Low lives. Drek. Okay, I won't speak further. Don't get me started. So you see what happens. The Jew loves the Jewish people, but he has a hard time liking them. While the anti-Semite, as we see, the anti-Semite, he likes many particular Jews, but he has no love for our people. You see, we Jews are one family. Right? We fight like a family. We argue like a family. We also love each other like a family, which means that sometimes we hate each other like a family, which we'll get to this inside in a moment. Even a Jew is completely different than I am. I still love him because at a very deep level, we're truly one. We're united by our fate, by our history, by our destiny, by biology. We're all one. We're related to each other in one way or another. On the way here, I was listening on the radio to a lady from Limpopo who is part of the Lemba tribe. I'm talking about their whole community in Limpopo. They're all like one family. It's the same idea, especially since genetically we're connected. We're all united. There's lots of people that hate us. We have more things. Jackie Mason says when two Jews meet and within 3 minutes they have not established a familiar relationship, it's certain that one of them is not Jewish. But most importantly, and this is really the essential bond that we have, is that we are united by our spiritual core, with which we'll conclude with this one last thought for today, the Yiddish and Neshama, the soul that we all have. And like every existence, material or spiritual, the soul is both made up of many subparts, and it's also part of a larger entity. And this is the teaching of Rabbi Chaim Vital. And with this insight, or maybe one more I want to put up on the screen. Let's read this one. He was the chief disciple of the Arizal. He says as follows: all of Israel comprises one complete entity within the soul of Adam Harishon. And he says, each individual constitutes one particular part of Adam's soul. This is the basis of our responsibility of one for another, which is why in Yom Kippur, when we confess our sins, or even every day, we say it in the plural. Ay, 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 ay. Oh, Shamnu, we have sinned. Bogadnu, we say it in the plural because we're all responsible for each other, right? Because when one person commits a sin, we are all guilty. So what he's saying is that this encompassing soul of Adam that he mentions here is that we're all part of a single whole. We're all part of that soul, which is fragmented into many other souls, but we're all one. Okay? Now, I always wonder when I read this insight, aren't all souls in the world contained in Adam, right? It's true. So in a general way, you could say that Adam's soul was divisible into different parts, and that the truth is, we're all of humanity is one. We all come from Adam, and we should all be one. But in Kabbalah, it goes on and talks about that the number 613. There's 248 organs, 365 sinews, and in a more specific way, his soul was divisible into innumerable sparks, with which are all the souls of all of humanity, and then more particularly the souls of the Jewish people, which is why you have the various tribes and all that. Not to go into all the details, but in this particular text, the Arizal, not the Arizal, Rabbi Chaim Vital, a student, mentions specifically how we all come from Adam. But essentially, we're all one. He's talking about us as a Jewish people, as a family, and maybe that's why he mentioned this specific. Like a hologram, every particular soul comprises within it all the other particular souls. So we're all really united biologically into each other. Since we all come from that general, all-embracing soul of Adam, we can appreciate how we're all truly one spiritual body. That's the emphasis he's saying here. As the concept here, we're gonna close off the screen for now to conclude this. This is what I put up here before. That's not the point. I missed things around. Here, this is the one I wanted to highlight to conclude it. The Gemara says as follows: what would a person do if while cutting a piece of meat with a knife, the knife cut their hand? Would the injured hand hit the other hand to reprimand it? You hear? You're in the kitchen. You're cutting a salad. It never happened that you cut. I've done that many times. Maybe I don't belong in the kitchen. Obviously, you're not going to hurt yourself back. He's saying we're all like one diverse limb. We're all united with each other. When I insult you, when I hurt you, it's not only you that I'm damaging. I'm actually harming myself, because we are all interconnected. So here is the thing that sometimes we struggle, and we'll have to continue this discussion next week. But the point is that we love each other because in so many ways we are so similar. And even more so, we are essentially one, is what Rabbi Chaim Vital was saying. So what's the challenge? The challenge is that because we have such a deep-seated love for one another, we sometimes struggle to respect each other. And therefore, we have to learn to become less judgmental and less discriminating and less insulting and less denigrating and less detached from each other. Because if we were really truly in tune with who we are, then maybe we wouldn't be as hurtful to others as we could sometimes become. So I'm leaving you with these questions to exit today's share with. And please God, on Monday, we'll continue this theme and we'll get into some of the solutions from a practical and a mystical perspective. Here are the questions I leave you with. Do you feel that most couples that marry but get divorced later have had love? What do you say? If yes, why did that love dissipate, as we discussed a little bit today? And do you think that our love is enough to guide us in raising and educating children? Or do we also have to respect them, as we talked about? Let's talk more about this on Monday. Tomorrow's theme and topic, Miriam?
Last week, we spoke about Moses being a dropout. This week, we are going to talk about how Moses handles being a dropout and how he finds his way back spiritually.
I have no doubt this will be a fascinating, most interesting topic of discussion. So please all come join tomorrow, 10:15 a.m. right here. Enjoy lunch. Thank you all so much.